Okay, when we are answering a question about percentage of a whole and we don't know what the part is, here's how I would kind of mark this problem up. It said, Elisa answered 95% of the questions correctly. Yay, Elisa. There were 45 questions on the test. So how many questions did she really answer correctly? And you need to think about this. Your answer is going to make sense if it is a little bit less than 45 questions because she didn't get them all right. So your answer can't be more than what the questions are on the test, okay? That gives you a hint about what the whole is. So when I'm reading up, Elisa answered, here's my percentage clearly. That's one of the simplest ones to pull out of the word problem. 95% of the questions correctly. Of the questions. How many questions were there? 45 questions. That of is that clue word that the of is the total. Those are the total questions on the test, correct? Now we need to know how many questions did she answer correctly? How many questions did she answer correctly? That's the is. It doesn't say is, but we know it's the part because she didn't get all of them correct, and the total is 45. So we can identify those without having those words specifically. So don't get hung up on the words in word problems all the time. I like proportions, so I'm going to start with the proportion. We put percent over 100 equals the part over the whole. In this case, my percent is 95, so I'm going to put 95% right here. I don't have to change that at all because 95 over 100 really represents the percentage. That's why I like proportions. Of the questions and the questions that are on the test, there are 45 questions. That's the total. That's the whole. There is a total of 45 questions. So the part that she got right is what we're not sure of, but we know it's going to be less than 45, but it's going to be close. 95 is really close to 100. Okay, now we're going to use our cross products when we cross multiply to create an equation so we can solve for x. So 100 times x is 100x. And then on this side, we're going to have 95 times 45. Now I'm just going to simplify these here because I didn't take my calculator out right away to multiply 95 times 45. But now I will. That's going to be 4,275. Don't worry about those big numbers. It makes sense because we're multiplying some double-digit numbers. Now, to get rid of this 100 on this side to leave me with x, I have to divide by 100. And I have to do it to both sides because that is our guideline to keeping this equation balanced, okay? Since I've done it to both sides, we know it's still equal. So 100 divided by 100 is just 1, which leaves us with x, 1x. That equals what? Well, I can sit here and use my calculator to divide by 100, or I could just move that decimal over if you know that dividing by 100 is the same as that. So she got 42.75 questions correct on her test. She must have missed a quarter of a point for maybe a unit or something like that. And so when we go back, the question is, how many questions did she get correct? She got 42 7/75 of questions correct. This is our answer. Now, if you do not prefer proportions and you prefer equations, that is just fine. Let's look at what an equation would look like. It's got the same number, so it's similar that way, set up a little bit differently. Our part is the portion that Elisa answered correctly. We don't know what the part is, so that's going to be our variable. And then we have a percentage. We have to write it as a decimal. That's a little bit tricky. So our decimal points right here, we're dividing by 100, so we're moving it over twice to the left. So we have 0.95. That's what a percentage looks like as a decimal, times our whole, which is 45 questions. So we don't even have to do any solving. We just have to do some simplifying. 0.95 times 45, which gives us 42.75. And I was hoping that was the answer that we were going to get because that's what we got over here. So 42.75 questions correct.